Corruption, fraud and greed continue to dominate media here in the United States and around the world, as high unemployment and wage stagnation plague the middle class.
And growing income inequality has caused millions to wonder, is the system rigged? Is the free market in its very nature corrupt? What is the relationship between morality and markets?
Amazingly, a Scottish philosopher and economist explored that very relationship nearly 250 years ago, in the 18th century. His name was Adam Smith.
Adam Smith was first and foremost a moral philosopher.
His great gift was observation.
But perhaps he's best known for his groundbreaking work in economics.
Some people say that he is really the father of modern economics.
He went on to study at Glasgow University, became its top administrator, and then a pillar of the most unlikely intellectual revolution the world had ever known, the Scottish Enlightenment. He lived, lectured and socialized in Scotland's capital city of Edinburgh, created the unique economic concept of an invisible hand to describe what happens when we act in our own self-interest, and invented the idea of the impartial spectator in his surprising analysis of the evolution of morality.
And I'm fascinated by Adam Smith, a man who would turn the notion of how societies and economics work on its head and make way for the modern age.
The company actually becomes an Asian power. It has its own army, its own navy, and of course its own merchant ships are armed as well.
In fact, it was one of the most powerful organizations on earth.
The company is actually minting its own coinage in India in order to strike some of its deals.
So an official coat of arms and minting your own coins, it seems like they're almost spontaneously, without intention, moving from being a company to becoming a government.
Absolutely. This is monopoly. The company has real power. So this is company as government. If you think of Adam Smith's ideas of a free market, of free trade, the company is the absolute antithesis of that. When it's not making a profit, when military conquest in India really is a drain on its finances, the British government has to step in to prop up the East India Company. Essentially, the company becomes too big to fail.
In order to bail out the company, Parliament passed the Tea Act of 1773, allowing the company to sell its tea to the American colonies on privileged terms at a tax rate lower than the local tea merchants. This, of course, led to the Boston Tea Party.
So it is East India Company tea that is thrown into the harbour at Boston. Now, it might be too much of an exaggeration to say that the East India Company's monopoly caused the American Revolution, but definitely a factor in it.
Karl Marx was a philosopher, journalist, and economist. 200 years after his birth, his ideas are still relevant. Today, the sweeping changes happening in the wake of globalization are sparking fresh debate about capitalism and social inequality. Marx himself insisted that the job of philosophers was not just to interpret the world, but to change it. Over the years, many have sought to put his ideas into practice in widely differing ways and with widely varying results.
Capitalism is unstable, capitalism is unequal, and capitalism is fundamentally undemocratic.
I want people to make their own choices about how they live their lives, the professions they lead, where they want to work, and what they do. And capitalism offers that potential.
Slavery did it with masters and slaves. Feudalism did it with lords and serfs. Capitalism does it with employers and employees.
Capitalism, private property, is necessary, although not sufficient, to a free and open society.
In the United States, a full-time male worker, median, income has stagnated for a third of a century. No increase. Household income today is the same as it was 15 years ago. All the increase of the income has gone to the top.
The share of income in the United States that was going to the top 1% of the households 20 years ago was around 12%. Today, that share is closer to 23%.
Long before the recession, jobs in manufacturing began leaving our shores. Technology made businesses more efficient, but also made some jobs obsolete. Folks at the top saw their incomes rise like never before. But most hardworking Americans struggled with costs that were growing, paychecks that weren't, and personal debt that kept piling up.
Marx would say this squeeze on wages was the root cause of the huge economic crisis that we've been living through. But you might see a problem with the Marxist explanation.
If it was all down to low wages, you'd expect the crisis to have started where people spend their pay, out in the real economy. One way or another, that is how most of the recessions since the war have got started. But this time, it wasn't the high street that sank the city, it was the other way around. The explosion that rocked the global economy in 2008 was detonated deep inside the banks.
What Marx would say is that we have to look for ways out of this crisis which look beyond the restoration of capitalist class power. And I think this is a time when we actually need to start thinking about the revolutionary solution again.